Your objective for lesson 4 is I will compare and classify quadrilaterals. So we are moving on to a new module, and the beginning of this module starts with quadrilaterals. Quadrilaterals are shapes that have 4 sides, so you're not going to be looking at a triangle or a pentagon or an octagon or any other shape that has more or less than 4 sides. Quadrilaterals only have 4 sides. And the best way to remember that is by this word right here, quad. Quad means 4. If someone were to have quadruplets, they would have 4 kids. So just remember that the word quad means 4. So when you think of quadrilaterals, you're going to think of 4 sides. And for this lesson, we're going to go straight into the problem set. I know that it says concept development, but in your binder, this is the first page that you have, and I may have even written problem set for lesson 4 at the top of it. And I know that it says concept development, so it's kind of like the concept development, but we're doing the problem set with it at the same time. So you'll need to have this paper in front of you and ready. And I will tell you that this is a paper that you're going to have to look at quite a bit, because there's lots of different ways that you can compare quadrilaterals and classify quadrilaterals, and this page is really going to help you remember what is what, because all the previous years that I've taught this, all my students have really had to go back to this page a lot to remember what their answer would be. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the very top where it says quadrilaterals are named by their sides and their angles. So looking at all of these shapes, you see that all of these shapes have 4 different sides. And when you're looking at the angles, you're looking at where the sides meet. So this is an angle, and this is an angle, if I could get that right. So where all the sides meet is where you see an angle. This thing keeps messing up. See if I can do it again. There. Okay. So when you have a quadrilateral, you see that they're going to have 4 sides. So you're going to write that on your paper in your binder. And then they all have 4 angles. My new computer just messes up so easy these days. Okay. So you have that written on your paper. Look at this error alert. It says some quadrilaterals cannot be classified as a trapezoid, rectangle, square, or rhombus. Those are the 4 main quadrilaterals that we're going to work with today. But sometimes when you're looking at a shape, it can't be either one of those. Most of the time it will be, but like this shape right here, you wouldn't call this any of them. It's just a quadrilateral. There's nothing else that would classify that. It could not be a square or a trapezoid or any other shape. So the first quadrilateral we're going to look at is a trapezoid. And one thing that you need to know for the start of this lesson are what parallel lines are. And this is something that you should have already learned, but I'm going to go over it again if you don't remember. The parallel line are 2 lines that are right next to each other. I mean, I guess they don't have to be right next to each other, but they're close to each other. But they're never, ever, ever, ever going to intersect or touch at any point. If these 2 lines were to keep going and going and going and going, they would never cross. And what I mean by cross is here's one line and then here's another line, and these 2 lines cross, but these 2 lines would not. So parallel lines means that you can have these lines keep going and going and going and going and going, and they're never, ever, ever going to cross. So when you're looking at the trapezoid, this line right here and this line right here, if I were to draw this line out and I were to draw this line out, you see that they're going to cross right here. So that would not be parallel lines. But if I were to draw this line out and if I were to draw this line out, they would keep going and they would never cross. So this trapezoid has 4 sides and has 1 pair of opposite sides, because these 2 sides are opposite of one another, opposite sides that are equal. So right here you're going to put the number 1, and that's the same for this shape right here. This line, oh my goodness, this computer. This line right here, if I were to draw this right here and this right here, these two lines are opposite of one another, and they would also keep going without intersecting or touching at any point. So this is another example of a trapezoid. I know that they look a little bit different, but the one thing that you need to remember about a trapezoid is that they have one pair of opposite sides that are parallel. The other side, or the other pair of opposite sides of a trapezoid, are not going to be parallel. Okay, moving on down. Rectangle, square, and rhombus. So we're going to start with a rectangle, and I'm going to go to why you see a picture of a rectangle and a square in just a second, because in this lesson you're going to explain. You see down here at the bottom it says explain why a square can also be named a rectangle and a rhombus. So we're going to learn how a square can also be a rectangle and how a square can also be a rhombus. And this is probably something that you've never heard of before. So we're going to look at a rectangle, and we're going to see how many pairs of opposite sides are parallel. And if you remember, parallel, just two lines that are never going to meet. So when you're looking at these opposite sides of this rectangle, here's one side and here's another side. If these sides were to keep going and going and going, would they ever meet or would they ever touch anywhere? And your answer should be no. So right now we've got one pair of opposite sides that are parallel. Now I'm going to take those away. If I were to do the same thing over here, would these opposite sides ever touch or ever meet? And the answer to that is also no. So for a rectangle, there are two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. So you need to write that on your paper. Now we're looking at the next line. It says blank pairs of sides that are of equal length. And this is something that we learned when we were working with area. We know that the opposite sides of a rectangle are equal in length. So this side right here, oh my goodness, and this side right here are equal in length. So that's one pair. And then this side right here and this side right here are also equal in length. So that is another pair. So a rectangle has, once again, two pairs of sides that are of equal length. Now we're going to go on to this next one, and this is something that you may have seen in Think Through Math. I don't know if you've heard of this type of angle before, but it's one of the easiest angles to remember, and it's called a right angle. And one thing that you need to know is that a right angle makes an L. Okay, there's other types of angles, and they do not make an L, but a right angle will make an exact L. So it's like the corner of a piece of paper. And the L can be this way, the L can be upside down, it can be turned sideways, but any L that you see in a shape, and it has to be an exact L, it could not be like this, where it was slightly slanted. Like this is also an L, but this is slightly slanted. It's just two lines completely straight to make an exact L, and that would be a right angle. So when you're looking at this rectangle, right here and right here is a right angle. So you're really looking at each corner where these lines meet. Right here and right here is another L. Oh, goodness gracious. Right here on the other side. Okay, I'm just done drawing that. But you can see on the other sides of these of this rectangle that I'm going to be able to draw another L right here on this angle and another L right here on this angle. So that tells me that this rectangle, it has 4 right angles. So we're going to write, oh my goodness, we're going to write right here that it has 4 right angles. So now we're done with our trapezoid and our rectangle. Now we're going to move on to a square, and you'll be able to see more of why a square can be a rectangle as well. So it says that it has blank pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. So I can see that this side right here and this side right here are both going to be parallel, because if I were to draw these lines out, they would never meet. I just made that one slanted so that would need to be more straight. And then this line right here and this line right here, if I were to keep drawing those out, they would also never meet. So a square has two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. It says blank sides that are of equal length, and this one's going to be different than the rectangle one because we know that with the square, all sides of the square have equal length, so we're going to put 4 sides that are of equal length. And then how many right angles? This one's just going to be exactly like the rectangle because every corner that you see here makes an exact L. So a square, just like a rectangle, has 4 right angles. So I want you to take a look at this. A square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. A square can be a rectangle because it has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. A square also has 2 pairs of sides that are of equal lengths. I know that it has all sides that are of equal lengths, but that's the same thing as saying that the opposite sides are of equal lengths. And a square also has 4 right angles. So that's why you can also name a square a rectangle. But you cannot name a rectangle a square because a rectangle does not have 4 sides that are all the same length. So a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle cannot be a square. You might want to go home and ask your mom and dad that and see if they can figure it out. Okay, now the last one we're going to move on is to a rhombus. A rhombus is kind of looks like a diamond. Whenever you see a shape that looks like a diamond, that's a rhombus. And we're going to look at this one. And this one is a square, but we know that a square can also be named a rhombus. So we're going to look at this shape right now when we're working with a rhombus. A rhombus has all sides that have equal lengths. And you can see that if I were to draw lines on the opposite sides, that the opposite sides of a rhombus are also going to be parallel. I know that they're slanted, but just because they're slanted doesn't mean that they can't be parallel because they're both slanted in the same way. So if they were to keep going and going and going, they would never intersect and they would never touch. So blank pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, there are 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel on a rhombus. And there are blank sides that are of equal length, and there are 4 sides that have equal length. And that's what makes a square also a rhombus, because a square has 4 sides that are of equal length, and a square has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Okay, that took a little bit, but it's really important that you remember everything on this page because you're going to need it for what we're doing for this entire lesson. So this is the page that you're going to be looking back at a lot. Okay, so we're going to circle all of the words that describe each one of these quadrilaterals. So the first one that we're looking at is a rectangle, and I want to point out these little squares that you see here because you may see this like on the MAP test or the K-Prep test. These little squares up here in the corner, which look like L's, that's telling you that each one of these corners, which is also an angle, are right angles. So anytime you see these little L's or backwards L's on shapes, just think they have right angles wherever you see them. So the first thing that we know is that this is definitely a rectangle, so you're going to put a circle around rectangle. You need to ask yourself if this is a rhombus. So we're going to go back, and you may want to flip back too. A rhombus has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, and guess what? A rectangle has that too. A rhombus has 4 sides that are of equal lengths, but does a rectangle have 4 sides that are of equal lengths? And your answer to that is no. So a rhombus is not going to be something that we're looking at here. A square. We said that a square could be a rectangle, but we also said that a rectangle could not be a square, and the reason why is because a rectangle does not have 4 sides that are of equal lengths. So we're not going to be saying that a square is part of this one right here. So I'm just going to mark that out. And then a trapezoid, go back to the front. A trapezoid has exactly 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel. But if you look at a rectangle has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. So this cannot be a trapezoid either. So the only thing that we're going to circle for this one is that it's a rectangle. Okay, this one right here is a rhombus. If you remember, I said a rhombus is kind of like a diamond. So we're going to go right here and we're going to circle rhombus. And if you remember at the beginning of this lesson, this whole lesson is about quadrilaterals. So any shape that has 4 sides is going to be a quadrilateral. Also circle that this is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. Now we're going to go back to the front page and see if this rhombus is also a square. So we have to look at what it says a square has. A square has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, and a rhombus has that. A square has 4 sides that are equal in length, and a rhombus has that. But a square also has 4 right angles, and if you look at each angle on this rhombus, it's not an exact L, so that's not going to be a right angle on any of the angles for the rhombus. So when we go back over here, we're not going to be able to circle square because it does not have any right angles. The last one is rectangle. So let's go back to the front and see if a rhombus can be a rectangle. So we have to look at what it says for a rectangle. Oh, scroll down, please. Okay, it has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. It has 2 pairs of sides that are of equal length. And I know that a rhombus says that there are 4 sides that are of equal length, but that's the same thing as saying that 2 pairs of opposite sides are of equal length. But another thing that a rectangle has that a rhombus does not have are the 4 right angles, so we cannot circle rectangle either. Okay, I hope by now that you're starting to kind of remember what a rectangle and a trapezoid and a square and a rhombus all have. So now we're going to look at this shape, and I know exactly by looking at it that it's not a rectangle, it's not a square, and it's not a rhombus. And I know that the only other one that we looked at earlier was a trapezoid. So we're going to circle that this is a trapezoid. And if you need to go back and look, it said that a trapezoid has 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel, and it kind of looks just like this one. There are not 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, so the only sides on the trapezoid here that are parallel are going to be this one and this one. I'm not going to go back, but a rectangle has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are of equal length. And when you look at this trapezoid, this side and this side do not have an equal length. This side and this side do have an equal length, so this only has 1 pair of sides that are equal of length. This has no right angles, and it only has 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel, and a rectangle has 2 pairs, so we cannot say that this is a rectangle. We know automatically that a rhombus, just like this is, has all sides that are of equal length, so that tells me right away that this cannot be a rhombus because it does not have all sides that are of equal length. But we can say that this is a quadrilateral because it does have 4 sides. My goodness, it's a big old circle. Okay, so we're going to move on down, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Circle all the words that describe the quadrilateral. And this one, don't mistake this for a trapezoid because you have to remember that it has to have 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel. But if I were to draw a line on this side, and if I were to draw a line on this side, these 2 lines would meet. And then if I were to go over here on the other side and draw a line, and then this side and draw a line, if they were to keep going, let me make it keep going, they would eventually meet. So this shape actually has no sides that are parallel, so it cannot be a rectangle, it cannot be a trapezoid, and it cannot be a rhombus because every shape that we've looked at least has 1 pair of parallel sides. So the only thing that we can circle for this shape is going to be a quadrilateral. Okay, moving on to number 8. I can see that there are 2 right angles, but everything that we've worked with so far either has 4 right angles or no right angles. So these 2 right angles right here don't really matter. But I am going to look for parallel sides. So if I had this keep going and I had this keep going, those would be parallel. If I had this side keep going and I had this side keep going, and let's say I had this keep going up, then these would eventually meet. So this shape so far only has 1 pair of sides that are parallel. And that tells me that it is going to be a trapezoid because a trapezoid has one pair of sides that are parallel. Keep making these big old circles here. It can't be a rectangle because a rectangle, let me get this off the screen. A rectangle has two pairs of opposite sides that are parallel, and a rectangle has 4 right angles, so it can't be a rectangle. It can't be a rhombus because a rhombus has all sides that are of equal length, and these definitely do not have all sides that are of equal length. And it can't be a square because it also has all sides that are of equal length, and it has 4 right angles. So the only thing that this shape is a trapezoid. Now we're moving on to this last one. I'm automatically going to circle that it's a quadrilateral. Whoa, look at my circle. Let me try that again. It's a quadrilateral because it's got 4 sides. I automatically know that it's a square. And then what I'm going to do is we're going to circle that it's a rectangle and that it's a rhombus, because if you remember from the first page that a square can be a rectangle and a square can be a rhombus. So all of those are circled for the square. Okay, now we're moving on to the back side. Okay, so for number 10, 11, and 12, let me erase that. We're going to be looking at all of these shapes. So it says, which quadrilaterals appear to have 4 right angles? So remember, a right angle makes a L. So I know for a fact that C right here is a rectangle, so I know it's going to have 4 right angles. I'm sorry that that keeps popping up. My new computer just makes it hard. Look, it did it again. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay, let me just type it. C. There we go. Okay. This one right here, I know that you're going to want to say, oh, that is a rhombus. But it's really a square turned sideways. A rhombus kind of looks a little bit different. The lines are more slanted in a way, like this one right here. This right here you could say is a rhombus. You can see that the lines are more slanted. But this shape right here is really just a square turned sideways. So we can also say that the shape B has 4 right angles. And we know that a rectangle and a square are the only shapes that have 4 right angles, and those are the only 2 up there that are a rectangle and a square, so those are the only 2 that we can put for number 10. Number 11 says, which quadrilaterals appear to have 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel? So let's just start with shape A. You can see right here on shape A that this side and this side, they're opposite sides, and if these lines were to keep going, they would never meet. So we're going to put shape A, and then we're going to move on to shape B. Shape B, we said, was a square. It's just kind of turned sideways, so we know that on a square, all of the opposite sides are parallel. So now we're going to put shape B has 2 pairs. Oh, wait. I need to go back. I forgot to read this carefully. It said 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. So guess what? It cannot be A because the other pair of opposite sides are not parallel. So I can put B. So I'm going to put B, and then I'm going to move on to C. C is a rectangle. We know for a fact that a rectangle has opposite sides that are parallel. So I can put shape C has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are parallel. Shape D is a rhombus, and we also know that a rhombus has 2 sides that are opposite of one another that are parallel. And then shape E, these 2 sides on this shape right here, if they were to keep going and going, they would meet. But this side and this side right here would not meet. So I cannot put shape E because it only has 1 pair of opposite sides that are parallel. And then when I look at shape F, there are no sides that are parallel because any of the sides that are opposite of one another, if they were to keep going, they would meet. So it doesn't have any sides that are parallel. So let me take this line off of here, and then we'll move on to number 12. It says, which quadrilaterals appear to have no right angles, meaning on any of the angles, none of them are right angles. You can see right here on shape A that this side right here and then this side right here where they meet would make a right angle. This shape actually has 2 right angles. Shape B, we said, was a square turned sideways, and we know that a square has 4 right angles, so we can put shape B. Shape C is a rectangle. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I keep reading these wrong or thinking that I'm reading them wrong. We cannot put shape B because we're looking for the shapes that have no right angles. Shape C is a rectangle. It has 4 right angles, so we cannot put that. Shape D is a rhombus, and a rhombus has no right angles. Shape E, if you look at everywhere that the sides meet in every corner right here where the angles are, none of those could be right angles. They're not going to make an L. So shape E also has no right angles, and definitely when you look at shape F, there are no right angles in there either. Okay. If I could get this thing to just stay where I wanted, it'd be good. Okay. Next one says write all or some to complete the sentence for 13 through 18. So 13 says the opposite sides of all or some rectangles are parallel. And we know that all the rectangles have opposite sides that are parallel, so we're going to put all. Blank squares are rectangles. All squares are rectangles, and we learned that from the beginning, that a square can be a rectangle. Blank quadrilaterals are polygons. Polygons is something that you learned before 3rd grade. The one thing that you need to remember about a polygon is that it has to have straight sides, and it cannot be open anywhere. You can't have any open places. They all have to be a closed shape. So when we look at all of the quadrilaterals in this square, we can see all of the sides are straight sides. That's something that a polygon has. It can't have any curved sides. And all of these shapes have no open spaces. They're all closed. So all quadrilaterals are going to be polygons. Okay, number 14 says blank sides of a rhombus are the same length. We know that I think I said earlier that D was a rhombus, but D is actually not a rhombus because it doesn't have all sides that are the same length. It just kind of looks like a rhombus in a way. But when we go over here to the front page to look back at rhombus, we know that a rhombus has all of the sides that are the same length. So all sides of a rhombus are going to be the same length. And then it says all or some rhombuses are squares, and we're going to put, I don't know if I would put some, but that's the only other thing that there is to put. I guess that we could put, you know what, I'm going to take that away. I'm going to cut it. Whoops, I pushed copy or clone. I'm going to put no rhombuses are squares because the rhombuses do not have any right angles. So we cannot put that rhombuses are squares. So we're going to put blank polygons are quadrilaterals, and we're just going to put some polygons are quadrilaterals because polygons can have 3 sides, 4 sides, 5 sides, 6 sides, 7 sides, 8 sides, 9 sides, and so on. So only some polygons are quadrilaterals, and those are only the ones that have 4 sides. Okay, we're almost done with this page. It says, circle the shape at the right that's not a quadrilateral and explain your choice. So it's pretty much explain why you circled that it wasn't a quadrilateral. What makes it not a quadrilateral? So if you remember, quadrilaterals have to have 4 sides. So you're going to pretty much be looking for the shape that doesn't have 4 sides. So that's going to be this shape, if I can get it to circle. This shape right here. And I know that's like a weird circle. It's just because of my computer, and I'm not even going to try again. The shape has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. So when we explain, we're going to say I circled a pentagon, and you can put that if you want, because that's what that shape is called, because it has 5 sides, not 4. I'm going to make mine smaller. I go over more shapes whenever we start with perimeter, and I tell you different ways that you can remember different shapes. Like a pentagon has 5 sides, and the best way to remember that is P-E-N-T-A has 5 letters, and that's the best way to remember that a pentagon has 5 sides. Okay, moving on to the last one. It says, I am a polygon that has 4 sides and 4 angles. So that tells me so far that it's only a quadrilateral. At least one of my angles is a right angle. Circle all the shapes that I could be. Okay, we know it's not going to be a trapezoid because a trapezoid doesn't have any right angles. It's not going to be a rhombus because a rhombus does not have any right angles. We know that it's going to be a quadrilateral. I'm not even going to circle it. So you're going to circle quadrilateral. We know that it can be a rectangle because at least one of the sides of a rectangle is a right angle. So you need to circle rectangle. And then we also know that it could be square because at least one side of the square is a right angle. So we have to also circle square. Okay, not doing that page today. What you're going to do here for number 1 and for number 2, you're going to write beside the shapes which one of these words will describe these shapes. So some of these shapes may have more than one word next to them, may have more than 2 words next to them. So you're going to write all of the words that are going to describe shape 1 and describe shape 2. You can look back at that first page if you need to help you out. And then you're going to bring me this whenever you're finished. This was a long lesson, but there was a lot in this lesson that you really needed to remember and to know. So I hope that you remember quadrilaterals for the next lesson that we're going to do.